We did the book What Investors Really Want. My name is Hunter Van Gorder and my partner was Maureen Milliken. This book brings behavior finance into the investing world. It explores the thought process we all go through when making investment decisions, but also talks about our biggest mistakes as well. We are taught through this book how our own thoughts and emotions can really be the driving force behind our investment decisions. This book discusses major ideas like biases, mental accounting, herds and bubbles, and much more, which we will dive into later in this presentation.
There are definite goals that we hope to achieve from our investments, such as saving up for retirement, supporting our children, or donating to charities. However, there are also some goals we hope to reach that we may be less inclined to admit, such as achieving a higher status or being able to buy high-end items. So there are three benefits of investing: expressive, emotional, and utilitarian. An expressive benefit is defined in the book as what investments convey to us and to others about our values, tastes, and status. And an emotional benefit is how the investment makes us feel. For example, bonds make us feel safe and stocks give us hope. And finally, a utilitarian benefit is one that supports us financially and generally delivers a profit, so it's the more reliable investment.
The book refers to two different types of investors. Index investors are content with returns that are equal to risks. Beat the market investors desire to receive returns that are higher than risk. These investors spend a lot more time reading up on the company, their financial statements, examining stock price patterns, and performing other research to find investments that yield returns higher than risks. However, on the downside, they usually succumb to cognitive errors and emotions to think that beating the market is possible, when, as we know in reality, a consistent pattern of returns higher than risk does not usually occur. Beat the market investors are usually rather overconfident to a fault, and more likely than not, this leads to irrational investment decisions. Statman mentions an investor who realized gains on his own stocks, but never any losses, because by his own personal accounting, unrealized losses are no losses at all. This falls under the confirmation bias, where we accept evidence that only confirms what we want to hear. Statman also tells a personal story where he had to decide whether to spend roughly the same amount of money either to replace the engine in his old car or purchase a new car. After thinking it over, he decided to make the more cost-effective choice and get a new car. This helped cut any future losses made by dumping more money into an old car and instead start fresh with a new one that won't need repairs for a while. Investors should realize that when they are falling victim to the confirmation bias, such as avoiding to realize their losses, they must make a beneficial decision for the long run, such as realizing losses for the current tax benefit and discontinue spending time and money in the future on a failing investment.
Mental accounting is an idea that is reiterated time and time again by Statman throughout this book. But what really is mental accounting? It's the idea that knowing or not knowing, we divide our assets and investment decisions into separate accounts in order to make future decisions. In theory, this should help us make more rational decisions with our money moving forward, although that's not always the case. This idea is supposed to help us divide our money so we can determine how much to spend, save, and invest so we're able to live with the same level of comfort throughout our entire life. But this is always harder said than done, due to the uncertainties that come with life. Whether you lose a job, start a family, etc., you can't always plan for these things. Another challenge we face is self-control. But if we are able to conquer our self-control, that can end up being the best form of mental accounting. The best division of accounts within mental accounting as an investor would be the fear of poverty and hopes for riches. We as investors are willing to sacrifice dollars for hope, but we need to take measures to avoid overconfidence and risks that could lead us into that poverty. Another topic discussed by Statman are herds and bubbles. A herd is our natural tendency to copy the action of a larger group. So here we'd invest when seeing others investing into a certain stock. Whereas a bubble is an extremely quick growth of an asset or stock price followed by its burst or quick decrease. Herds are a lot of time the cause of bubbles, but it's difficult to know when you've fallen victim to one. It's very normal for people to get caught in a herd and bubble and lose money because of it. A lot of times people join herds unknowingly by trying to express their interests and emotions through investing. We see stories of herd behavior time and time again in today's society. Some big examples over the past couple decades are Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme and Enron, which was a publicly traded firm. When it comes to herds and bubbles and most investment decisions, it comes back to one simple quote: My favorite quote in this book: "If it looks too good to be true, it probably is."
The book mentions several different factors that affect one's investment tendencies. The first is a difference in culture. Statman took two different countries, China and the US, and compared them. China is a more collectivist country, whereas America is more individualistic. As a result, Chinese citizens are more willing to take a risk because they generally have more of a safety net and family-oriented culture. So when Chinese investors fail, they feel they have a higher level of security and will be protected and supported by family and friends. Personality differences also account for varying levels of willingness in accounting. The book mentions that conscientious and agreeable people are less likely to take risk, whereas extroverted and open people are more likely to take risk. Additionally, men and women in over 23 countries were surveyed, and it was determined that men are more likely to take the risk of falling into poverty in order to have a chance at receiving riches from their investments. And finally, age is definitely a factor. Statman says that young people crave hope for riches more than older ones, and this is definitely, relatable. Older people, as they're living off their savings, are definitely less likely to take risks than young people who have a lot more time to save up. Individuals should plan to strike a healthy balance between sufficient saving and oversaving for their personal needs and wants. We don't want to live a life without treating ourselves and being overly frugal, but we also want to be very well prepared to live comfortably in retirement. As mentioned, people invest for other reasons, such as putting their children through college, so it is wise to plan appropriately by knowing how much must be invested each month and budgeting this amount into current expenditures in order to live comfortably in the current day-to-day life, as well as be very prepared for the future. Additionally, variances in types and levels of investing is hugely dependent on personal choice, preference, and ability. We know that the human race is very imperfect, but we can be more rational investors and better investors if we acknowledge that we have cognitive errors and find ways to overcome them, as well as avoid the effects of emotions on our decisions. Understanding how we make decisions, as well as admitting that we do make mistakes, is important to being a smart investor and reaching future success.